For 1 whole week, every ghostly, ghoulish creature is coming from all over the country to Discovery Kids. They're bringing some terrifyingly spooky programs with them, like Mystery Hunters, Grubs, Truth and Scare, and premiere episodes of the new Scientific. It's all happening from October the 31st, from 4 until 6 every single day. Scary week, all this week from 4 on Discovery Kids.
Say they've seen them. Visitors swear they've heard them. Some even claim they felt them. They're ghosts. The mysterious spirits that supposedly haunt some of our most luxuriously spooky hotels. Every story is stranger than the next. But could they actually be true? It's time to find out. We're checking into haunted hotels on Truth or Scare. We've got reservations at some of the most fabulous old hotels in the US. There's just one thing you should know. These places have a certain reputation for terror. Some guests claim that when night falls, you might hear a few windows rattling and doors slamming, or see strange apparitions and ghostly visions. Are these specters just the creation of overactive imaginations? Or are these historic hotels truly filled with restless spirits? Here on the banks of beautiful Lake Mascoma stands the Shaker Inn, a 24-room mansion built in 1837. The inn gets its name from the secretive religious community that built it. The Shakers came to America from Europe at the end of the 1700s. They were led by a man named Caleb Dyer to Enfield, New Hampshire. This is where the Shakers built this imposing 6-story structure. For most of them, it was their whole world under one roof. They lived there, worked there, ate there, and worshipped there. Today, the Shakers are gone, and the building they lived and prayed in has been turned into a hotel. But some say their spirits live on inside the Shaker Inn. And who would know better than the innkeeper himself?
The Shakers believe very much in spirits, and that feeling still permeates this whole building. When you walk through this building, you can feel the spirits.
And many visitors claim they can also hear them. They say they've heard doors closing and footsteps creaking down the hallway. Of course, that could just be another guest who's having trouble sleeping. But how do you explain this?
My chambermaids tell me that up on the 4th floor, in room 15, there is a rocking chair that often is just rocking by itself.
Even when there's no wind coming through the building and no guests in the house, that one chair in that one room mysteriously keeps rocking. But many locals believe it's the restless spirit of the Shakers' leader, Caleb Dyer. What we do know is this. In 1863, the minister's life was ended by a local man named Thomas Wire. The man was desperate. He had lost his wife and had 2 young daughters to provide for. The American Civil War was raging. So Wire joined the Army of the North for money and left his daughters with Caleb Dyer, knowing that the kindly Shaker community would look after them. And he was right. The girls missed their father, but the Shakers gave them a safe, stable, happy life. But 6 months later, their father came back for them. It was apparent to Caleb Dyer that Thomas Wire was unstable. Fearing for the girls' safety, Caleb refused to give them back. But what he didn't know was that Thomas Wire had a gun. And when Caleb turned to go back into the house, Thomas Wire did the unthinkable. Caleb Dyer's tragic death shattered the whole community. Without him, the secrets of how the village was run were gone forever, and the Shaker village fell apart. Which is why some people say that only Caleb's bones rest here in the cemetery. They claim his spirit, still miserable over the end of the Shakers, is haunting the hotel. A friend of innkeeper Don Levitz was exploring the 5th and 6th floors of the inn, floors that have never been used by the hotel. Don's friend wandered through the dark, long abandoned rooms. Then, on his way back downstairs from the 6th floor, he met a perfectly friendly-looking couple on their way up.
And my friend turned to them and said, "Watch out for the hand railing because it's creaky."
But as he spoke, he says the face of the man on the stairs suddenly transformed into another man's face. A very angry face.
And he said those eyes, those milky eyes, just kept drawing him in. And at that point, he had to leave the building.
Not long after that, a portrait was found at the inn. It matched the face Don's friend saw on the stairs that night. It was a portrait of Caleb Dyer. So if you ever find yourself in Enfield, New Hampshire, you may want to prepare to be scared when you visit the mysterious Shaker Inn. They say scaring the guests at this spooky southern mansion is child's play. There's no better place to feel welcome than in one of the South's historic mansion hotels. But at one particular hotel, don't be surprised if you run into an unexpected guest. Over 100 years ago, in Charleston, South Carolina, this mansion was home to a 12-year-old girl and her family. Her name was Sarah. Today, Sarah's house is home to the Rutledge Victorian Guest House. But some say Sarah still lives here, playing games with the guests' minds. Lights that flicker on and off. Could it really be the ghost of a 12-year-old girl? Of course, it could also be bad wiring, or a trick of the wind. But many people say the explanation is simply Sarah. It all goes back to one terrible night. Sarah was in her bedroom on the top floor of the house. She had just fallen asleep when tragedy struck. The young girl was hopelessly trapped. Her parents were devastated. It wasn't long before they left the house and Charleston forever. For nearly 80 years, the burned-out mansion remained empty, a creepy reminder of that tragic night. Then, in the mid-1980s, the house was rebuilt and opened as a hotel, with every authentic Victorian detail restored. But as historian Ed Grimble tells us, for a couple who stayed in Sarah's old room, the experience was a little too authentic.
The wife was sleeping, and the pillow was under her head, and all of a sudden, the pillow was pulled out from under her. She really thought it must be her husband. So she put the pillow back, and then moments later, the pillow was pulled out again. Now she knew it was her husband. So she looked over, and there he was, fast asleep. Who pulled that pillow?
Was it Sarah, or just one of those dreams that feels so real? There are other guests who claim that as they climbed the stairs to Sarah's old bedroom, a little girl would appear, staring down at them through a window at the top of the stairs. But most disturbing of all are the reports of an unmistakable odor that sometimes fills the air, a smell that leaves no doubt in Martha Jenkins' mind. Sarah's here.
You can smell her coming because her clothes still smell like the smoke, so you know that Sarah is there.
And in the last few years, the claims have gotten stranger. They say Sarah's gotten more daring. Now she sometimes plays her pranks outside of her room, in broad daylight. Like the time when two guests were having tea in the dining room. They stepped away for just a minute. When they returned, their teacups were stacked, one on top of the other, and there was no one else in the hotel. Was this Sarah's strange new way of having a tea party? Or was it really just a busboy with a wicked sense of humor? Whatever it was, those two guests checked out the next day, never to return. Sarah had her house back, at least for a little while, and as new guests arrive, we can only guess what the little girl in the attic has in store for them.
For one whole week, every ghostly, ghoulish creature is coming from all over the country to Discovery Kids. They're bringing some terrifyingly spooky programs with them, like Mystery Hunters, Grubs, Truth and Scare, and premiere episodes of the new Scientific. It's all happening from October the 31st, from 4 until 6 every single day. Scary week, all this week, from 4 on Discovery Kids.
Travelers lost in the desert sometimes see bizarre visions. The blazing heat of the sun is the reason, supposedly. But at one resort in the desert town of Palm Springs, California, many people are convinced that the elegant ghost who haunts the grounds is no mirage. The Korakaya Hotel is like no other place in Palm Springs. It's an oasis in the scorching California desert, with cool blue pools and exotic Moroccan architecture. No wonder it's so popular, with top fashion photographers, models, and the spirit of a mysterious beauty named Gertrude. Apparently, a sure sign Gertrude is around is when on warm, windless nights, the surface of the pool suddenly ripples. Some guests say they even feel a cold chill run down their spine, even though it's 70 degrees. But that's only the beginning. Candles sometimes blow out, for no reason at all. Unless maybe someone or something is there. A few visitors even claim they felt Gertrude's presence. Could all of these people have gotten too much sun? Or is the mysterious Gertrude more than a trick of the heat? Maybe Gertrude herself can explain the mystery. It turns out she was a model, but back in the 1930s, Gertrude posed for painters instead of photographers. One of those artists, Gordon Coots, couldn't resist his model's charms, so he married her. To show his love, Gordon built his beautiful new wife an exotic and romantic home. It would be a palace for his queen, inspired by the magnificent architecture the artist had seen on his travels in the North African country of Morocco. But this fairy tale romance came to a quick, tragic end. Gordon died suddenly, leaving Gertrude all alone. But it wasn't long before she had a second chance at love. An artist named John Laverly came to console Gertrude, and soon won this beautiful young woman's heart. Gertrude and John settled in at Korakaya. and became known for the fabulous parties they'd throw for their artist and writer friends. It was at one of these parties that tragedy struck. Apparently, John had wandered away from the main party, but Gertrude couldn't bear being apart, so she went off to look for him. But when Gertrude turned a corner and stepped into the road, a speeding car came at her, and she was gone. Gertrude's death brought Korakaya's elegant nightlife to an end. For over 60 years, it lay still, silent, with only the haunting memories to fill it. But in 1993, the house was finally restored to its former beauty and opened for business as a luxurious hotel. The exotic setting was a huge hit with fashion photographers. Korakaya was back, and better than ever. But if this next story is to be believed, the beautiful women who come to Korakaya today are sharing the spotlight with a fashionable phantom from the past.
If there's a photo shoot happening, I'm sure she's coming out for it. I'm sure she wouldn't miss it.
Many models who have worked here claim that when they're out of their rooms, they return to find clothes that are not where they left them. Lipstick and makeup have been moved. It seems that someone has snuck in. Could it be one of the housekeepers? Or is it Gertrude? But missing mascara hardly compares to what they say happens on the anniversary of Gertrude's death. A slim, well-dressed lady has been seen walking toward the road at exactly the same spot where Gertrude was struck by that car. Does her beautiful ghost truly haunt this luxurious California resort? We may never know for sure, but these days, it's very fashionable to think so. When sleeping in a hotel built in the 1870s, you should expect to hear a few bumps in the night. But some guests of the Snowball Inn in Knights Landing, California, say that they've heard babies wailing, doorbells ringing, and even claim they've seen a woman who walks through walls. Cheryl and James Furing, the inn's owners, know why.
It's always been the big, haunted, scary mansion. All the children in Knights Landing think it's the haunted house.
The oddest feelings is when windows rattle.
According to the Furings, the windows rattle one at a time. They start upstairs, moving across the front of the house, down to the front door, then around to the side. Has one of the mansion's former residents refused to leave? John Snowball built this house for his wife Lucy as soon as they got married. They were a young couple in love, living a fairy tale romance. Only one thing was missing, a child.
Sound came from the land.
Then when their beautiful daughter was born, John and Lucy's joy was complete. Though John often had to go away on business trips, Lucy's days were filled playing happily with the new baby. Whenever John came home from a trip, it was a special occasion in the Snowball house. Lucy would put the baby to sleep, then go downstairs and listen to stories of her husband's travels. On one fateful night, as John talked, Lucy drifted off to sleep. The next morning, she awoke, but tragically, her child didn't. After that terrible night, Lucy became almost like a zombie.
She was devastated. She blamed herself.
Lucy lived into her 70s and never stopped grieving for the loss of her child. Some say that even death can't bring an end to Lucy's misery. Would that explain the bizarre incidents at this historic mansion? Could it all be Lucy Snowball, unable to escape her guilt and grief? Some guests say yes. Late at night, some guests claim they hear unexplained knocks on their door, as if Lucy were trying to wake them up. Maybe she's trying to prevent another tragedy? Even creepier is one guest's claim that he had seen Lucy's ghost come through the wall, a wall that stood where the door to the nursery once was. Of course, not everyone is convinced that Lucy still roams these halls. But Cheryl Furing says that Lucy has no patience for non-believers.
I had a friend visiting, and we were out in the garden, and we were talking about the spirit of Lucy. And she said she didn't think that Snowball Mansion was haunted.
Right after she said that, the table tipped over. Creepy? Definitely. But is it proof that Lucy haunts her family's mansion? Perhaps a night in the old nursery at the Snowball Inn would help you to decide. Even with all of the bizarre claims of unexplained sights and sounds, these historic hotels still pull in guests from around the world, some of them actually looking for a good scare. And even though there's no proof that ghosts exist, if you spend the night in one of America's haunted hotels, you might want to sleep with the light on.